So in this video I played Skyrim in 2023 for the first time. Now I have heard that the next and the 6th game in the series will be coming out, but it's not looking like anytime soon, as in not this year or next year, and maybe not even the year after that. I've always wanted to try Skyrim because it has been one of the most iconic games of all time, and it did revolutionise gaming, with the game being incredible at the time of release, 12 years ago in 2011. Therefore this is a great opportunity to find out if it is still worth playing, and if it still holds up in 2023. It's perfect to do a review as it's still ongoing in terms of the community and modding, which I will be getting into, but because it's been so long and I'm sure there's many features that can be immensely improved if it were to release now, I and many others who haven't played it or want to revisit it want to know if it's still worth playing. If you enjoy video game reviews like these, I've done plenty on the channel with lots more to come, so you can hit that like button down below to let me know, and if you would like to and you're new, then feel free to hit that subscribe button down below, and let's answer the age-old question: is Skyrim still worth playing? Now for people that don't know and are going on in somewhat or completely blind, Skyrim is an open world RPG game. You play as a character that you can fully customize in terms of face design and body to make them similar to yourself or however you want. And like with all the features in this game, which I don't really want to keep repeating, but I do feel like it's going to be a running theme in the video, but because it was released a long time ago, there's for sure much more that they can do in terms of customization. However, I don't want to be too harsh, though then again this is a present day review, so I will mention the good and the rooms for improvement. Though for a 2011 game, I was surprised at the facial features customization and different sets of eyes and noses etc. to choose from, and not just it being a few presets for your character. Though when I did first start, I did go in completely blind with no knowledge of Skyrim beforehand, and I thought it was one character or protagonist you play as, but it's actually your own individual character who's a dragonborn, which in the lore of the game basically means they are blessed with the magic blood of a god, which is associated with dragons, hence the name. And they have a body of a mortal but a soul of a dragon, so quite surprising to me, I didn't expect that. I had no clue what I was getting myself into before trying the game out. With your character you explore and play in the Skyrim's world of Tamriel, I think that's how you pronounce it because they don't really mention it in the game, which holds many different lands and is home to Nords in the northern region of Scandinavia, with very snowy mountainous regions and deep forests and snowy lands, which was fun to explore due to how vast the world is in Skyrim, with many places to explore, with an abundance of side quests and collectibles throughout the game, and just so many areas. I would say this is the strongest aspect of the game for me, and how every area you explore is so engaging, and especially in the towns and villages, with just so much life and characters to meet, with every NPC being able to interact with you and talk, though the dialogue options are fairly minimal, which is expected because there's so many NPCs in the game, it's crazy. And when you aren't interacting with them, they're always working, whether that be in markets or blacksmithing, cooking or bartending or even singing, and just so many other unique and little features of each character you see. It really just does feel alive. That's what I love about the game, and the world feels even more alive than many RPGs that came out years after. Even the scenery of Scandinavia does feel as immersive as it can be due to the not only just how dated the game is, but just the setting itself and how it has the same or very similar colour palette through the majority of the game. It's very hard to sort of branch out with a setting like this, even in modern day, as this region isn't really the most exciting for everyone because there's not as much variety in scenery, so you do need to really add the most diversity in the world as possible, which is no surprise that it would have been quite limited back then when the game first released. However, though the common areas could have a bland and sort of depressing feel, there's many bright and more colourful areas to explore in the game, all covered with small hideaways and hidden areas that the average player may not find because they're somewhere you don't go too much in the world and can easily be missed. So overall the scenery in terms of nature and architecture in the towns and many castles, they all feel very fitting and does immerse you into that ancient world of Skyrim, because it is a very old world as in the actual time period. The buildings in terms of houses and inns are usually made out of wood with fairly detailed texturing on the walls and, you know, uneven bricklaying. The roofs are of course thatched with straw and are historically accurate. Of course the colossal castles are mostly based on the top of various mountain ranges, which you always see nearby or at least in the distance. They don't look too bad when far away in terms of view distance from an old game like this. and the graphics can always be slightly altered in settings, but just how every castle is unique in itself and the overall design with intricate details in terms of the spires and towers. Then of course there's always the thought of personal preference that can always tie into the game world as well. Without saying too much, the main journey you follow and the player's mission is to defeat the dragon of Skyrim who wants to basically destroy everything, which to be honest the main quests are very tunnel visioned with not many branches in story that would usually be seen as slightly lazy because it's just this one returning dragon throughout the whole game, and the player could get bored easily. However, Skyrim does portray this ongoing battle as very engaging and you are determined to finish it. Now once again this would be very risky to do nowadays because of video games being so detailed and filled with so many different storylines and quests to follow that with some games become way too much, and I would say this is one of the biggest issues with playing this game for the first time in 2023, or even just revisiting it, but that could also be down to just looking at it through rose tinted glasses and the nostalgic aspect. I'll extend on the story later, but this same aspect does apply in the overall gameplay of Skyrim, with the simplest way of putting it is fairly basic. The gameplay consists of the typical RPG features of exploring areas and clearing out an array of locations in the game, mostly being dungeons, like a lot. It's of course going to be more narrowed down than other recent RPG open worlds we've gotten, as I said with the story side as well. It runs in first and third person, but it's primarily played in first, and the thing is, this style of gameplay that first started off in Skyrim and is what made the game so incredible and ahead of its time. All the other open world and RPG style games follow this route, but they just keep adding much more and extending on it each time. Therefore Skyrim does easily become very outdated. You could just think I'm saying this as it was released a long time ago, but the main reason is because it was one of the first and does focus on this mission to take down this dragon target throughout the whole game and not much else. This means that there's 100% really old games that came out even before Skyrim that include a lot more variety and are a lot less basic, but that's because they weren't the first of that style, if you get what I mean. For example, Assassin's Creed is, in my opinion and many others, the best Assassin's Creed game there is, and still does offer a lot nowadays, but it was because it wasn't the first action-adventure game, whereas Skyrim was one of the first RPG games that became improved so much more with each released. You know, there's a lot more RPG releases after that. Now, some players may enjoy this feel of Skyrim and how it is somewhat basic in gameplay and quests, as it's very easy to follow with the overall determination followed throughout, and the main goal to gradually keep clearing out dungeons for armor to increase your character's power. Then there's magic to keep adding to, weapons to collect from many different enemies you defeat, and areas and skills to level up, which all make the Dragonborn stronger as you progress. So it's an exciting and engaging experience because you're always progressing closer and closer to the end of this dragon that I know many people will love, as still seen in many and similar RPG games. For example, Elden Ring, that is a big grind, but it is an amazing sense of victory and achievement when it's over and finally getting to that point, like Skyrim is like, but because of it being fairly outdated now, it's of course going to be on a much minimal scale. The combat involves light attack, heavy attack, block, then uses magic where the blessing really does come into effect as a Dragonborn to help you. The magic can be used with either one hand or even dual wielded. That's pretty much it. The variety of weapons is great, with swords, daggers, bows and arrows, maces, warhammers, bolts, axes, two-handled battle axes, crossbows, great swords and more. So the weapons and magic combined is really where it does become customizable, and you can experiment quite a lot, which doesn't really become confusing and overwhelming, which is great with combat. I really enjoyed it like this, and the average player, although not crazy, they can have fun with it, and due to the age of the game, every now and then the gameplay can be clunky or unresponsive with the odd audio glitch, which I noticed with water for some reason. Also the random texture pop-ins, which is expected in all games to be honest. Overall, with how old the game is, I didn't really see it take away from the immersion, and these issues in the overall gameplay, graphics, etc. can always be altered and added to in many ways, in the settings and also in mods, which I'll get into. And one of the biggest reasons why Skyrim is still very ongoing and loved is due to the active and creative modding community. It's no lie that the base game looks incredibly outdated now and the graphics are very light. Therefore, many people who play Skyrim, and I definitely recommend doing this if you are playing it for the first time, it allows you to play in a much more immersive world in terms of visual, and that is of course by downloading mods to the game. So Skyrim is by far the most popular game to mod due to not only the improvement of the graphics and visuals, but you can also add extra features for gameplay and UI that definitely help your playthrough. It's pretty much a must-have if you're going to play the game, unless you want that authentic and nostalgic experience of course. The original visuals are very very dark with dull lighting and lack of colour to really immerse into the game. That's why there's so many mods, as it's the top game on Nexus Mods, which is basically the best and most popular mod download site for so many games. For visuals, you can fully upgrade the look of trees, grass, water, roads, overall textures, weather, shades, audio, and even the NPCs. This completely overhauls the game as it makes it look and feel much better, as well as helping with performance as well and the bugs I mentioned. The gameplay you've been seeing does have sky and texture mods that you could say are fairly minimal, and that's mainly because I first of all wanted to walk through the game early and also have a more authentic experience to show what the game that came out 12 years ago looks like and feels like, to answer the overall question of if it still holds up with no mods. But I'll for sure be adding more mods in terms of not only better visuals but gameplay as spoken about. This adds a lot more quests and missions and dialogue options for all the characters you meet. The NPCs in the base game are fairly minimal in terms of what they offer, as it is literally the most simple and early side quest features in video games, though it's mainly the quantity and how much mini quests you can do, as you can talk to every NPC in the game, and although it may be small, they usually do have something to offer. So overall, modding improves the game drastically, and I do feel like the average player needs to use them to engage in the game a lot more, but it's always, personal preference. If it does feel outdated and dull, then there's plenty of mods to add that are usually very easy to set up on Nexus Mods. And that's pretty much it, where we end the review of Skyrim in 2023, and to answer the question of is it still worth playing. With a lot of my videos on any game really, it's always difficult to fully narrow it down to a simple yes or no answer, as there's always different views and opinions people have on each game. What I can say is if you are more of a person who enjoys an abundance of gameplay features with a richly detailed story and main quests that branch off into so many different directions that you feel keeps you engaged the most due to the sheer amount of what the game allows you to do, then I would say maybe not dive into Skyrim if you're fully sure about that those are the type of games you like. As I've mentioned throughout, although it's an open world RPG style game, it's still very tunnel visioned and narrow in terms of the main quest and story. The overall world of Skyrim is, for me personally, what makes it loved. Of course, the idea of how revolutionary it was at the time of release as well, but how alive the game feels and how fascinating it is to explore, because the scale and the abundance of random things you come across and the feeling of completing quests and exploring with many characters to meet and ones that react to you, and the amount of small interactions spread across the whole world, as well as the combat being, yes, minimal and slightly outdated, but the amount of weapons and magic to implement into your gameplay that you collect and gather as you progress through the game to reach that one endpoint that's been your main goal for this whole time. It does feel like a big accomplishment when it's finished, which you may not get with recent games due to the many different story arcs and various missions there are to follow. It's definitely a great experience overall, and I would say to check it out and complete the game in 2023 for those reasons, as well as the game being so iconic in gaming. So if you did enjoy this 2023 review of Skyrim and found it helpful, then I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button down below to let me know. And if you enjoy these type of videos and love story games, then maybe considering subscribing to the channel as well. I have numerous playlists of the games I have reviewed, and whether that be new or old games, there's one at the end of this video and even in the description down below to check out. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye bye.